All right, one last look at your traffic and weather for your ride in on this Monday morning. A couple accidents to report, one at East Steel Street and Memorial Drive, another one at Highway 321 and Busby Road, and finally one at Platt Springs and Kaiser. Today, high of 94, chance for a gusty thunderstorm late in the afternoon. Tomorrow, high of 90, same thing for Wednesday as well. Currently 76 here in downtown Columbia on the game. Oh, 9 o'clock on your Monday morning. Welcome in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here today on The Game. Just me. Jack is out of town for the next couple days. We'll get him back in here on Wednesday, I believe. That's kind of what happens this time of year in the summer. Of course, we got football and all that kind of stuff coming up here in a little over 2 months' time. We'll get into our countdown into the season at 75 days coming up in hour number 2. But we're all getting our vacation days in when we can because really once like media days hits, we're locked in from now until basically the end of the year, basically up until Christmas time on all things football, so no time for vacations then. So I was out last week. Jack's out for a couple days this week. Again, we'll come back in on Wednesday, and I don't know, Wes and Chris maybe have a vacation coming up here in the next couple weeks as well before we all lock in for football and the stretch run coming up for this fall. But I enjoyed my week off. Sounds like nothing too crazy happened while I was gone. I look around and nothing's on fire, so it seems like everything held in check pretty well while I was out, so that's really, really good. I don't know if I even mentioned it before I left, but I did go to D.C. Last week. We were there from Saturday to Saturday, so really cool experience there. I've been to D.C. before. I went on the 8th grade trip like so many other kids did, back in middle school. But I told my wife several years ago, I'm like, I'd love to go back because when you're on a school field trip with, I don't know, 100, 150 kids or however many I went with back in 8th grade, they kind of rush you through things. And we had like an itinerary that we got off course on like day number 1. So we started skipping things or not having time to like really enjoy things or take everything in. So I told my wife a couple years ago, like, hey, I'd love to go back and just kind of really pace myself and really take in everything and enjoy a little bit more now that I'm older and I've learned a lot more history, since 2010. I think I'd have a greater appreciation for what DC has to offer, and that's what we were able to do. My wife surprised me with a trip for my 30th birthday, so that was really cool. Really enjoyed it, and again, got to see a lot of cool things for anybody that's been up there to DC. Obviously, you have the monuments, the Washington Monument, Lincoln Memorial, the Jefferson Memorial, all that kind of stuff, the Martin Luther King statue. You see all those kind of things, around the National Mall. We get to go on a Capitol tour, which is really cool. Got to go inside the Library of Congress and all that kind of stuff, which was really, really neat. The best thing, though, and you got to travel a little bit for this, but Mount Vernon, which is the estate of George Washington, where he lived and is still entombed at to this day. That was really cool. We spent like almost an entire day there. So if you ever make a trip to DC, I recommend carving out a day or at least half a day to go hang out at Mount Vernon and take all that in, because I thought that was really maybe one of the highlights of the trips as well as the People's House, which is a White House like interactive museum that they have, which is like a block away from the White House, that I didn't even know existed until I went to it the other day. But that was really cool too. So a lot of fun things in DC. Enjoyed being out there. Enjoyed kind of unplugging a little bit too. I made a point for myself in going on this trip because, and for the purposes of doing this job here, where you have to try and be on top of everything happening at every moment, every single day in the sports world, I am on Twitter constantly. And look, Twitter has its benefits and has its disadvantages, but I feel like I kind of get addicted to it sometimes, and I'm just scrolling, looking for that next thing, looking for talk about something interesting, a quote or whatever it may be. So I told myself, like, you know what? I'm just going to put this to the side for an entire week, and I did that. I managed to stay off Twitter for 7 straight days, did not get back onto it until yesterday morning. And after that first day, when you kind of get that FOMO feeling out of the way, then you're good after that. So that was nice. I did keep up with sports that were going on. Obviously, I was watching what I could at our hotel or keeping up with things on my phone, watch SportsCenter every single morning. I would read Gamecock Central and On3 every single day just to keep up with the headlines. But for the most part, I was able to truly kind of be in the moment and enjoy what I was seeing and what I was experiencing there in D.C., which was really awesome and just a really great reset. Again, this as fun as this job is, it is a grind, right? And we're here trying to produce entertaining content for you, the listener, and you, the audience, every single day. So there's a lot that goes into that. So it was nice to kind of unplug and disconnect for a week and get away and see some cool stuff. So I enjoyed that. But now, I don't have any other vacations scheduled from now until the end of the year. But I'm locked in. I'm ready to go. And full steam ahead to football, which, again, is 75 days away. And, again, we'll get into the 75-day and what that number means coming up to begin our number 2. But in being out of town last week, as I mentioned, I was keeping up with the headlines and all the things going on with Gamecock sports. I did miss a few things that I do want to weigh in on for the next few minutes here, just to kind of catch and get it back up to speed on things before we dive into the latest of what's happening around not only Gamecock sports, but around the sports world as well. And, of course, we had the Kevin Schnall intro the prior Friday night. We talked about it that Friday going into it, what it was going to be like out there at Founders Park. I did not get to go to this event because, packing and getting ready to take off for a flight the next morning and all that kind of stuff. But it looked like it was really awesome. The helicopter entrance for Kevin Schnall, like Schnall seems like a no frills type of guy. Like he seems like a guy that drinks black coffee, that he's not going to put, fancy creamers and stuff like that in it. So to see him come in with a helicopter entrance was pretty neat and surprising to a degree. But I think he said as much in his press conference afterwards. And I did watch that prior to getting my flight Saturday morning. That he said, hey, if it helps the program, if it helps us recruit or helps us get guys, I'm all for it. So, it seemed like it was a warm welcome, well received. It seems like they really went all out with the introduction over at Founders Park, the other day. So that was really cool. And as expected, the buzz is really high, and everybody's still very excited about what the Kevin Schnall era of Gamecock baseball is going to be. And as you're watching the College World Series wind down, we'll get to that later on in the show as well with what's going on with Oklahoma and North Carolina as they get set for Game 3 coming up tonight to, for all the marbles. You think to yourself, like, hey, can Carolina be there next year? Now, I'm not talking specifically in the finals, right? I'm talking like, can they be in Omaha next year, which is a high bar to set for year number 1 for any coach, regardless of what they'd accomplish. But, when you have a guy that has been there and done that as recently as Kevin Schnall has done it, going back to a year ago when they played for the national championship against LSU, you're allowed to dream big. Like, if you want to set your expectations for South Carolina to be in Omaha in year number 1 under Kevin Schnall, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong for thinking that. Right now, I would reel my expectations back a little bit personally, just because I think it is going to be more of a stepping stone. But I do expect them to be in the postseason. I would love to see them host a regional at the very least. That may be asking for a little bit much. But I would be thoroughly disappointed if this team wasn't playing in the field of 64, come next June. And I do believe that Kevin Schnall has the ability to take them there. And, again, what happens in the tournament happens in the tournament. We see a lot of chaos and great teams go down and all that kind of stuff. And a surprising team in Oklahoma, again, playing for the national championship final, coming up later on tonight. But all the vibes of the Schnall hire continue to be insanely positive. And obviously, since I've been gone for the past week, a lot more stuff has happened when it's come to the transfer portal, bringing in more names from other places, including a familiar one in Tyler Pitzer, coming back over from Mississippi State. So that's really cool. Let's see. Since I've been gone, they've added Max Bianchi from Upstate. They've added Dominic Carbone, another pitcher from Coastal Carolina, Pitzer, and then Andrew Costello from Wake Forest. So we are rounding out this roster pretty well as again, a lot of holes to fill, a lot more spots to continue to add for South Carolina as we figure out what this first edition of a Schnall team is going to look like coming up in 2026. But, in listening to the press conference as well, again, as I did before I got on my flight to take off on, the prior Saturday morning, it was exactly kind of what I expected out of Kevin Schnall. Very intense, very kind of straight to the point, very matter of fact. We listened to, Mainieri and even Monty Lee, and those guys would kind of go on and on for 2 to 3 minutes at a time, which was fine. And I really enjoyed Monty Lee's breakdown and explanation of things at times when he would go on for a couple minutes. Schnall's not that guy, right? Like if you're wanting long sound bites out of a head coach, I don't think that's going to be Kevin Schnall's MO. I think he's going to be somebody that's going to be very straight to the point, very intense. Look, when things are not going well, when they have a bad game, when they lose a game, he feels like they probably shouldn't, he's probably going to be pretty short, right? But that's just the personality of who Kevin Schnall is, and that's fine, right? Like he's a guy that wants perfection, demands perfection, and we saw that out of his time when he was at Coastal Carolina, and he's going to expect the same thing here at South Carolina. And he does, have a learning curve to a degree when it comes to coaching in the SEC. Now, again, I said this before I left. I put up his numbers of, I believe it was out of 31 games coached against Power 4 opponents, he's won 20 of them in his time at Coastal Carolina. So he's no stranger to playing and beating those kind of teams, but being in the grind of the SEC week in, week out, day in, day out, and all that kind of stuff is something that he is going to be experiencing for the first time, and that could come with some bumps in the road. What those are, we'll obviously have to see, but I'm, like all of you, very excited to see what Kevin Schnall does and just return Gamecock baseball back to glory, right? Like give people a reason to come out to Founders Park. And I think there's a lot to the fact that they pulled out all the bells and whistles for this introduction, the other night over at Founders with the helicopter, fireworks, and all that kind of stuff, and bringing in fans. And it looked like it was a really good turnout for that as well. To build, it was a pep rally, is what it was. It was to build that anticipation for the upcoming season. And again, you still got to go out there and win baseball games at the end of the day. But I don't doubt that when South Carolina opens their season, I don't know, is it going to be a Valentine's Day weekend because of the Super Bowl this year, or is that moved back? I don't know. Regardless of whatever weekend in February the season does start and whatever mid-major they're playing over at Founders Park, I got a pretty good feeling that place is going to be nice and, if not slammed full, pretty close to it, because I think there's a lot of interest and intrigue on what this new era is going to be, and belief that this is the guy that finally gets you back to being a respectable, legitimate contender once again, right? And look, as great as it would be to win a national championship with Kevin Schnall in year number one, and we would enjoy the parade right here in front of us in Gervais Street if that happened, people just want to be relevant again, right? Like Carolina baseball has fallen down so much in these past 2 years. You're not relevant at the moment. You want to be a competitive team that people look at and say, okay, that's a team that can compete for the SEC and compete for a spot in Omaha, because you're not there right now. And if Kevin Schnall can return you back to that, then that step number one is checked off. Then it's like, okay, now we're going to talk about a run. Now we're going to talk about winning a national championship and all that kind of stuff. But getting this program back to an air of respectability is step number one. And I have no doubts that Kevin Schnall is going to be able to do that. Again, bringing over a lot of guys, a lot of really good players from Coastal Carolina, and supplementing the other spots with other various talents from around college baseball. And as these past couple days have gone by as well, we're also learning the destination of a lot of outgoing players as well, as there's still the opportunity for some of these guys to come back out of the transfer portal, but some of them have also committed elsewhere. Josh Gunther going to Georgia Tech, Dawson Harmon going to Miami, KJ Scobie going to Texas Tech, Zach Russell going to Mississippi State. So you almost kind of swap with him and Tyler Pitzer in kind of a trade right there. Caleb Hoover going to Nebraska along with Reese Moore. So you got a lot of these guys going to good schools, right? Like, it's not the situation with men's basketball where we looked at all the outgoing transfers and none of them are going to Power 4 institutions for the most part, or most of them aren't going to Power 4 institutions. They say, okay, that's kind of an indication on where this roster was if those main power schools are looking at them. But you have talent. You had talent on this roster. It just wasn't being maximized to its full potential in a lot of ways, and that was one of many reasons why South Carolina baseball was not successful this past season. And we expect Kevin Schnall to get the most out of his talent, and get this team back to playing baseball in the month of June. at the very least coming up next season. And again, a lot of time between now and then for when that's going to happen. But I did think the intro on the prior Friday night was really cool and a reason to get fans really juiced and excited for what's going to be happening in 2026 and beyond for Gamecock baseball. Other headlines that I missed from Gamecock and a national sports perspective coming up next as I continue on with the Extra Point. Tyler Head flying solo with you on your Monday on the Game.
All right, everyone, as we close out the first hour here, let me tell you guys about AAA Heating and Air, where home comfort is their top priority. Give a call today at 803-677-1500 to schedule a seasonal maintenance appointment. Let AAA Heating and Air's qualified technicians put your mind at ease with a thorough inspection and cleaning of your heating and cooling system. Join their popular AAA Comfort Club to take advantage of special extras like flexible visits, added discounts, and priority scheduling. AAA Heating and Air also offers indoor air quality products that work with your HVAC system to improve your home's air quality. Cleaning the air eliminates common household odors, removes allergens and pollutants, and can even improve sleep and reduce the spread of some viruses. So go to callAAAtoday.com for more info. Again, that is callAAAtoday.com for more info. Tell them Jack from 107.5 The Game sent you on over.
All right, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Monday on the Game. Catching up on all the things that I wasn't here to talk about last week. And again, plenty of other things to get into that are happening right now in sports and some things that happened over the weekend as well. But one more thing I want to touch on, what happened last week. And I mentioned as I was, on my trip in D.C. that I kind of made it a point to stay off social media for the week. Like, hey, I'm on Twitter as way too much day to day for the purposes of this job. I'm going to truly disconnect myself for an entire week so I can just kind of fully immerse myself in this vacation, enjoy it, not feel like I'm being distracted by, seeing what people are tweeting about and that kind of stuff. And the funny thing is, when you're not on Twitter, if you have notifications enabled, if you're not on Twitter for a period of time, they start trying to suck you back in, right? They'll start sending you notifications, not of like activity that's happening with your account of people liking or reposting or sending you messages or whatever. They'll start sending you like, hey, we know this is the type of content you typically follow. Here's a tweet from it. And in the middle of the week last week, I look on my phone, I get a notification on Twitter, and it's David Cloninger profile, and it just says breaking in all capital letters. There's no other words past that. It just says breaking. And I'm like, oh boy, well, that's probably not good. Now, I didn't break my, promise to stay off Twitter. I went to Gamecock Central to read what the breaking news was. I've said it ended up being Sam Williams-Dixon being, at that time, arrested. Right, that Sam Williams-Dixon had been arrested and is being, disciplined by the team. It would obviously come out later on in the week, or I guess the next day, that he had ultimately been dismissed from the team for, the break-ins to vehicles and the other charges that were being put against him. And I believe his brother was involved as well. Back, late last week or the week before, I guess it was. And it's, it sucks. It's unfortunate. You see that anytime you see that kind of headline associated with your team or with your program, it's a negative, right? Now, as I fully expected, as I was reading what the charges were, I was reading what he was in trouble for, I had pretty full confidence that Shane Beamer was going to say, yeah, no, we're not dealing with this. You can figure it out elsewhere, and booted him off the team, much like we saw with Devontae Miles earlier on in the offseason when he got pulled over. There was the stuff in the car and all that kind of stuff, and he was pretty swiftly booted off the team as well. And look, you can have your various opinions on Shane Beamer and the way he coaches or the way he roster builds and all this kind of stuff, but he's been pretty zero tolerance when it comes to discipline, right? And look, it's impossible to have a completely clean sheet because you're talking about 100-plus players every single year. There's going to be a couple bad apples in there that get in some kind of trouble every now and then. But for the most part, as Beamer gets set to enter year number 6 as the head coach here, which is an insane thing to hear, a insane thing to say out loud, I guess, he's done a really good job of keeping things mostly in line. And look, maybe there's some interdisciplinary things that happen within the locker room that we don't get to hear about as much, but in terms of players getting arrested, players in the public getting in trouble, it's been limited. He had a couple players, this would have been early 2023, that were new signees that were coming in that got in trouble, kicked those guys off the team. Again, you have the situation with Devontae Miles. Now you have this with Sam Williams-Dixon, the transfer from Ohio State, and there may have been another that I'm forgetting about, but either way, it wasn't a whole lot over the course of 6 total years. And there are other programs, including the one that I'm an alumni of, the University of Georgia, that unfortunately can't say that because they're having guys getting arrested and pulled over for driving 120 miles an hour in Athens seemingly every single week. So I give a lot of credit to Coach Beamer for running a tight ship around here and having basically a zero tolerance policy. Like, hey man, you screw up, you're getting arrested for really anything, you're done. And I do think that's something that sets a tone within your program. These other guys look around and say, hey man, if I screw this up, if I get arrested for shoplifting, or if I'm even speeding too much, right, I risk getting myself kicked off this SEC football team and making whatever money they were promising to pay me, through NIL and revenue sharing and all that kind of stuff. I think that does really send a message through the locker room that, hey, I can't screw up or I could lose all of this, here at South Carolina. So again, props to Beamer and the team for handling that the way that they did. As far as the running back room goes, we didn't much like Jabri Coleman. We just didn't know a lot about Sam Williams-Dixon coming in. He had a handful of carries. I think it was 10 carries for 62 yards, the prior season at Ohio State. So, would he have been getting serious carries this year? I don't know. Would he have been the feature back this year? Also, I don't know. Again, we kind of think, Matthew Fuller, Christian Clark, Jordan Howell are kind of the three in the mix for that. But when you have a guy that just hasn't played a whole lot, or a guy that has played at all in Jabri Coleman, you just truly don't know until you see them in action. But what he does hurt is obviously depth and the running back spot. And look, there's a reason why you made a change at running back coach in the offseason, because depth was a serious concern at that position. And we looked at the additions of Jabri Coleman and Sam Williams-Dixon out of the transfer portal as both those guys are redshirt freshmen. Again, Williams-Dixon got a couple carries. Jabri Coleman didn't play this past year at Penn State. Those guys were basically supplements for the lack of running backs that you've signed in the prior two classes, right? So they kind of filled that void of, okay, here's two guys that kind of are placeholders for what could have been running back additions out of the high school ranks these past 2 years. And now you lose one of those guys, again, as a depth piece. I don't know what he would have been, and I don't know how much he would have played or what kind of factor he would have been, but it would have been bodies in the room. You had 6 total scholarship running backs. You're now down to 5, I believe, right? So you hurt your depth a little bit there. Is that something that could still technically address, I guess, with a late signee? Maybe. I don't know if they're looking at that or not. But you do ding your depth a little bit there in the running back room. Now, that being said, typically, when you look around the SEC, you're not typically rotating heavy between more than like 3 guys. So, and look, it could end up being only 2, right? Where you have a bell cow back and a guy to relieve them type of thing. But until proven otherwise, we kind of assume it's probably going to be maybe a 3-man show, again, kind of between Fuller, Christian Clark, and Jordan Howell. Again, what Isaiah Augustive and what Jabri Coleman do, we'll see. But you do still have depth. It's not like, okay, once you get past your 3rd running back, you have absolutely nothing. But, the deeper you can be, especially in a room like that can be injury prone, the better you feel. So you've lost a body in that room, which sucks. But again, Beamer was kind of put in a no other choice situation there, given what he's historically done when it comes to discipline problems with his own team. Again, I commend him for it, because again, there's so many other programs around there that have let things slide and have not disciplined to the degree that they probably should have, that continue to let things fester and roll downhill. And South Carolina, for again, all you can say about Beamer as a coach and his decision-making process and recruiting and all that kind of stuff, he at least does his best to keep his program and keep his team on the straight and narrow. And again, there's a reason why there's only been a handful of disciplinary issues in 6 total years here at South Carolina, and hopefully that record of it being very few and far between can keep up. So again, 2 of those happening this offseason, but both those guys dealt with pretty quickly by Shane Beamer and kicked off the team. So again, that's kind of things that I missed over the course of the past or last week, I guess. Also, of course, you had the Hurricanes win the Stanley Cup final. I believe Jack went to the parade over the weekend. I saw, the coverage on SportsCenter of the parade. So when he gets back here on Wednesday, we'll have to get his account on if he was there and, his thoughts on all that. And, of course, the New York Knicks winning the NBA Finals and the big celebration that was. Again, I think I mentioned this before I left, that if you wanted to put on your tinfoil hat to say that the NBA wanted to push that to a game 6 to get it back to New York so they could have, the championship being won at home and all the celebrities there and all that kind of stuff, I could have seen that happening, and obviously didn't end up happening. They won it on San Antonio's floor. But, man, you want to talk about a parade that was well attended. There was not any standing room left around the city of New York. I think they're still celebrating them now. I feel like every time I turn on SportsCenter, they're showing another panel or another thing, or them on another show or something along those lines. And it makes sense. They're in the biggest media market in America, and they're a team that hasn't won a championship in multiple decades and hasn't even played for one in 25 years. That this would be a really, really big deal, and they are milking it for all that is worth. certainly up there in New York. So that's what I missed. Feel like I'm for the most part caught up now. We'll get into more current things going on in the sporting world coming up next. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Monday here on The Game.
To review, the goal scorer was not in offside position. Goal is correct.
And the building shakes in Seattle.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Monday on the Game. And Shake It did it indeed. That was part of Friday's game between the United States and Australia, as the United States was awarded the second goal after a review and was determined there was not an offsides or something along those lines. Look, I'm not a soccer expert by any means. I do enjoy the World Cup just because it is such a global event, right? The biggest really sporting event in the world when you really think about it. Now, one that America's not had a great reputation with over the years, but with the 2 wins they've had so far, and obviously locking up their group with 1 game to spare, so what happens in their game on Thursday doesn't matter. They're going to face a third-place team once the knockouts start in the following round after that. Like, there is a buzz and a sense of belief in the United States men's national team that I don't remember ever seeing before. And I remember the prior World Cups like 2014 and stuff like that, and tuning in and keeping up with what America was doing. But and look, social media obviously fans the flames of this a lot, where we kind of take things and run with it, and it kind of builds into something really, really big. But I don't know. Maybe this is the year. Maybe this is the year that America does something truly, truly special. And I always think about it that I think that would anger the rest of the world so much, right? Because in most other countries, soccer is the sport. Soccer is number one. It's what all of their best athletes do. It's what the majority of the people watch. It's what they pack out the majority of their stadiums for, because it's their biggest sport. And for America, it's like fifth. Football, baseball, basketball, hockey, soccer. Right? And I don't know, you can debate maybe soccer's bigger than hockey. I don't know. I would say probably not, but it's not the top, right? Compared to other countries. And, we talk about it so much that, the best athletes in America are playing those other sports, right? Like, and look, plenty of kids do multiple sports. I think Patrick Mahomes played soccer growing up, but his focus was obviously ended up being on football, and he's turned into one of the best football players we've ever seen. And you can go down the list of amazing athletes from various sports that, man, if you put those guys on a soccer pitch and had them train their entire lives, they'd probably be incredible soccer players, but they didn't end up doing that. So you have guys that have done that are obviously representing the country and doing an amazing job as of right now. But it would really aggravate the rest of the world if America did finally win this thing. And it's the sport that, again, isn't number one on our priority list. But I could see it being a big deal, right? We kind of debated this, I think, before I left with Jack, of like, how big would the celebration be if America did find a way to win the World Cup? And it's like, I don't know, do you do like a parade in New York or D.C.? Do you do multiple parades? Do you take it around the country? I don't know, but I think it would be a nice. It would be a big deal for a short period of time. I think we kind of quickly spin our focus back to football pretty soon after that, with all that coming up. Basically right after the World Cup, comes to an end. Really, they still got like a month left of this thing. I think July 19th is when the final is going to be. But for that moment, it would be the biggest thing in American sports and one of the biggest accomplishments in American sports if they're able to do that. Now, again, we're not trying to get too far ahead of ourselves, but what they've been able to do their first 2 games has been pretty impressive. And again, as a country that has historically struggled in this event over the years, it is nice to be able to dream, right? It is nice to be able to hypothetically say, man, what if? Because you do see that being a possibility somewhat in some degree. Now, again, you got a lot of soccer left to play. You got a lot of great countries and a lot of great teams try and get through. But for the moment, in terms of just trying to enjoy the ride, which I think is the best way to experience something like this, you can feel good in this moment knowing that you have the ability to be a team that can make a serious run in this thing. And again, we're going to be following along as the event goes along. I know Jay and Elijah were out there Friday at the British Bulldog and the watch party, and it sounded like it was a great time, and obviously, fun to watch America win that one against Australia. And again, they wrap up group play on Thursday, and then get into the knockout round after that, and we'll see what happens. But we already experienced the national pride of watching U.S. men's hockey do what they did back earlier on this year. And if you could double up and have something special with the World Cup, that would be really, really cool. So fingers crossed that does happen. But yeah, fun event to follow. I mean, really, you can't not turn on Fox or FS1 and see a soccer game going on, because there's so many, because it is group play. Once you start filtering those teams out, that'll be a little bit of a different story. But there's just been wall-to-wall soccer every single day for the past couple weeks. And when we were in D.C., a place called The Wharf, right there on the Potomac River, restaurants and shopping and all that kind of stuff. And they had this giant screen up there next to a couple of the pubs. And, we're showing the games pretty much every single day. So really cool to see that, experience that with a lot of people from around the world, representing their various countries. So that was kind of cool and a neat way to experience the World Cup when I was up there in D.C. But yeah, fun to see America, doing what they're doing so far throughout that event. Something else from over the weekend something else that happened over the weekend, long weekend, because everybody was off on Friday. We finally finalized the men's basketball roster for this upcoming season. So South Carolina has added a few more international players with Hugo Lopez and Matias Alenasco. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. You've also added Nasir Hines coming from a smaller school, and then Ford Wilder coming over from the high school ranks as well. So South Carolina's finally rounded out their roster, for the upcoming 26-27 season. That does include 3 international players, 3 national pros at that are 22, 23 years old. It's kind of the nature of the beast right now, right? And I look at a guy in Lamont Paris that is in desperate, I need to win or I don't have a job past this next upcoming season. And if you have the ability to bring in 3 guys from the international ranks, professional international ranks, that you think are going to help you out, you're going to do it, right? The morality of is that right or is that wrong has gone out the window, and that's the same for everybody. Everybody's trying to win. Everybody's trying to do what they can. Now, he's not like Will Wade and trying to build an entire roster out of that, right? That's a little bit different, but you're doing what you can, and here's hoping that these guys, come in and have an impact, right? And as we've talked about this roster being built for South Carolina, since the season ended and since the guys that they've added. And look, there's plenty of guys that have, been and added to this roster for next year out of the transfer portal that give you reason to be excited. Corey Mincy, Davian Hanna, I know who didn't play a whole lot at Alabama, but he's somebody that has a high upside potential. Cameron Heide, guys like that. It's still wait and see mode, right? Because we've been excited about guys in the coming out of the portal last year at times. And again, it just didn't materialize into being anything that was worth it in the SEC. And here's hoping. Now, again, you got some guys from some high-level schools that have been contributors that you think will translate well over to playing in the SEC, but it's all wait-and-see mode. Again, it's good they finally rounded out the roster. We knew that it was going to be a little bit delayed because of some of those international players, but now you've got all the ingredients. Now you got to go out there and cook something good, right? You served up really bad burnt chicken this past year. You need to go out there and serve up something more delicious that the fan base will enjoy this upcoming season to save your job, essentially. And again, Lamont Paris knows that. He's well aware of that. And here's hoping we have a more fun men's basketball season than what we had this past year. So we'll see what happens. But the men's basketball roster has finally been rounded out with all those last additions coming in the last couple of days. Coming tonight, we got a Game 3 in the College World Series to decide who the national champion is going to be. Do you get as hyped for a Game 3 as you do for a Game 7, so to speak? We'll discuss that coming up to wrap up hour number 1. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Monday on the Game.
to right. Thanks for playing. Owen Hall goes yard. It's 4-2 Carolina.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you, wrapping up hour number 1 here on your Monday on the Game. That was called yesterday. Game number 2 of the College World Series. North Carolina hitting another home run to give themselves eventually a 6-2 win to even the series at 1 game apiece and force a game number 3 to decide this year's national champion coming up tonight, 7 o'clock on ESPN. Always exciting when you get to a winner-take-all, do-or-die game number 3. Doesn't quite have the same ring to it as like a game 7 does that we're used to in every other major sporting championship in terms of sports that play series, right? With NBA Finals, Stanley Cup Finals, World Series, and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. The College World Series is so fun. Such a vibe, such a good buzz about it. That was something, as I was on my trip last week, that I was trying to watch as much as I could. Certainly, watch the Georgia games, playing Texas, playing Oklahoma, and all that kind of stuff. And again, it's always a fun event, and you get some surprises, right? We had so many surprises throughout this tournament so far when it came to Georgia Tech and UCLA getting bounced in their own stadiums in the regional round. And then you have a team like Oklahoma that nobody was looking at as a serious contender. They're the ones, of course, that eliminated Georgia Tech. Nobody looked at them as a serious contender coming into this thing, but they have been absolutely red hot. And it looked like, after they won the first game 9-3 on Saturday, looked like they were on their way to rounding things out with the championship yesterday as they, jumped up on North Carolina pretty quickly, 2-0 there in the bottom of the first inning. But that is where North Carolina pitching came in to lock things down from there. The combination of Lynch and Glauber came in, and after that first inning, combined to allow just 2 hits, no earned runs, through the final 8 innings of play. And even the series there, North Carolina at the plate was really good yesterday with 6 runs on 8 hits. Couple home runs there, as I just played one of those a moment ago, and now you've got an even series, and you got 2 head coaches that are trying so desperately to get over that hump, right? Like a guy in Scott Forbes who has been to the College World Series but not been in this position to try and win the national championship, and then a guy in Skip Johnson who came in as one of the head coaches that has been a runner-up before. Oklahoma was the runner-up back in 2022 and making their first return trip to the College World Series since then. So he's been on the cusp of this but not been able to get it done just yet. And I don't know which way this is going to go. I mean, you really have 2 interesting stories here, with North Carolina being one of those teams that was consistently towards the top of college baseball for the entire season, a team that obviously South Carolina, ran into when it came to that midweek game and at Truist Field up there in Charlotte. And then you have an Oklahoma team that, again, for the most part, people weren't paying a ton of attention to, and they ended the regular season on such a sour note. They lost all 3 of their final series in the month of May. They were 1-0 of the SEC tournament. They did enough to get in, enough to earn a 2 seed in the Atlanta Regional, and then they just turned on the Jets, right? And you have certain players stepping up. You have Dayton Taki hitting the walk-off home run against Georgia Tech in the bottom of the 10th inning in that final game there in the regional. Dayton LaChance, who's been one of the bigger stories of Oklahoma this year, and they keep updating the graphic that in his first 31 games of the season had 0 home runs, and then in the prior 32 games now he's had I think 16 or 17. And he had, 2 in that game on Saturday. So he continues to just play at an extremely high level. They're pitching really, really well. Obviously yesterday didn't quite go the way they wanted it to, but they're a team that just is the perfect embodiment of getting hot at the right time. And that's what it takes to win the College World Series. Sometimes it's not always the best team. It's the team that's playing baseball at its best when it really, really counts. And again, you have 2 kind of interesting sides of the spectrum here, with the North Carolina team consistently towards the top of college baseball the entire year, an Oklahoma team that's really surged here as of late. And I don't know, should be fun. Excited for it. Do you have a rooting interest in this? Do you want to see the SEC continue to dominate college baseball in terms of championships? Because that would mean rooting for Oklahoma, but there's always going to be that animosity back towards the team in the Carolina blue because, of course, the North Carolina, South Carolina thing, the debate on who's the real Carolina and all that kind of stuff. And obviously, that's a program that you don't want to see, I guess, have a ton of success and break through and win that championship. And I don't know. I want to be, like I've said for the NBA Finals, Stanley Cup Finals, I don't have a rooting interest. I just want to be entertained by a good game. We've had 2 fun games so far. Now, yeah, the final score doesn't necessarily indicate them being necessarily close, but they're games that, you knew both those teams were capable offensively of getting right back into it at any point in those late innings. That obviously didn't end up happening for North Carolina on Saturday or Oklahoma on Sunday, but hopefully we're treated to a good game tonight to wrap up the college baseball season. And with that, truly bring to an end, in a lot of ways, the bad 2-year run that Carolina has had, right? South Carolina, I'm speaking about now, with Paul Mainieri. And again, he's been long gone. I've already hired Kevin Schnall, but tonight is the end of the college baseball season officially. And then whatever semblance of this 2026 South Carolina baseball team still existing is truly open or truly closed and shut tonight with the ending of the college baseball season. Then again, it's full steam ahead to 2027 and hoping to see Carolina maybe be in a position to be playing for a national championship a year from now in Omaha. So, yeah, excited for that game tonight. And, again, we'll break that down a little bit more, or we'll talk about it tomorrow to see who the national champion is. Hour number 1 of the books, hour number 2 on the way, 75 days until kickoff. What's significant about the number 75? I'll tell you coming up next here in the Extra Point on the Game. Time right here for our friends over at Twin Peaks. There's that big soccer tournament going on right now. As I mentioned, you can't really turn on any of the Fox networks and not see a game from that event taking place basically from noon until midnight just about. And, when you have that many games, when you have that much sports content to take in, there's only one great place for it. That's with our friends over at Twin Peaks. I tell you about it all the time. They've got TVs literally everywhere. Whatever game you want to watch, whatever country you're rooting for, hopefully America, but if not, that's cool. Or support your own country. Whatever country you're rooting for, they're going to have it on those TVs. You can come in there, wear your kits, you get rowdy, cheer, order yourself a delicious 29-degree draft beer, some delicious scratch-made food from the kitchen as well, and just enjoy this great global soccer event with our friends over at Twin Peaks. Eats, drinks, scenic views. Welcome back in, hour number 2. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Monday on the Game. Back in the saddle after a week off. Again, spent the week in Washington, D.C. Enjoyed it. Had a lot of fun. Saw the monuments, the White House and all that stuff. Got a Capitol tour, which was really cool there. Again, spent some time at Mount Vernon, which is really neat. Recommended that to anybody. I didn't mention this at the beginning of the show, but look, we live in a place here in Columbia that doesn't have a rail system, right? We have a lot of trains. We have a lot of trains here. There are train tracks everywhere, and you probably get stuck behind a train coming to work every single morning. Wouldn't surprise me if that's the case. We don't have like a public transit rail system, and the DC Metro does, right? Between DC, Virginia, Maryland, and all that kind of stuff. There's a metro that runs underground through all that area, and when you're visiting DC, it's probably a good idea to get a Metro pass for the excuse me, for the week to get everywhere that you need to go. And we did that last week, and it's funny because as the week goes along, you learn, right? You learn which trains go certain places, where you need to stop, get off, and all that kind of stuff. But you never perfect it, right? And as the week was going along and my wife and I were hopping on various metros and things like that to go different places, there were moments where we didn't know where we were going. We went to the wrong place. We're asking people about things and all that kind of stuff. And it is funny when you're in a place where the locals use it every single day and you're visiting and not, using it for only a handful of days. They look at you like you're stupid for not understanding how a transit system works. I'm like, hey, and like, I get it. I'm from Georgia. I never rode MARTA. I didn't do any of that when I was in Atlanta. If we went to Atlanta, we drove in, we parked somewhere, and we went to the event or whatever that was. Like, I didn't ride the rail system there in Atlanta. So that was kind of a first-time experience for me doing something like that in a city like D.C. We kind of got the hang of it by the time the week ended. Just be mindful of how complicated that can be and how many nasty looks you might get in D.C. if you do it as an outsider, not a local, because the people there will certainly treat you a certain kind of way, given the fact that you don't know what you're doing more often than not when it comes to the rail system. So last week I wasn't here and didn't get a chance to be a part of the continued countdown to kickoff, as we're only 75 days away from South Carolina taking on Kent State coming up on September 5th. Now, later on in the hour, we are going to start our opponent preview-ish. I'll tell you what I'm going to do with Kent State and Towson coming up here in a minute. But over the course of the next couple of weeks, we will really dive into each opponent South Carolina is going to play and learn what we can about where they're at in this offseason so far and what that means for the upcoming matchup that South Carolina has with those teams coming up this fall. But again, we're going to start off with our 75 days until kickoff, and that brings me back to the Coastal Carolina game last year when on the opening play of the game, this happened.
Here's Lenore Sellers with Oscar Attaway to his right. Wide receiver screen to the left side. It's Sellers. He's got an opening in the 30, 35, 40. Here's Jaden with a cutback in the 50. Trying to keep his feet at the 35, 30. Trying to outrun him. Going to get a block from Juwan Howell. He got it. Touchdown, Carolina. Touchdown, Jaden Sellers. 75 yards.
And that was Jaden Sellers taking it 75 yards on the opening play there for South Carolina offensively to take the early 7-0 lead over Coastal Carolina. Carolina would obviously end up cruising to a 51-7 victory, I believe, in that game. And again, for that moment, especially when you go back and look that South Carolina had not won a game since Kentucky. So they lost to LSU, Oklahoma, Alabama, Ole Miss, and had just blown that 3-score lead, 4-score lead, 27-point lead against A&M the week prior. In that moment, and I went back and watched the clip last night as I was pulling it, like everybody's just going nuts and going crazy of how bad last season was. At least in that moment, you could just feel some kind of joy, even if it evaporated very quickly, knowing like, oh, well, we're just trying to get our 4th win here and limp into this Clemson game coming up the next week. At least in that moment is something that you could feel good about. But the reason I played that clip, again, 75 yards from Sellers to the house there for the touchdown, 75 days until kickoff, it was a play that started the game off the right way. I thought it was pretty interesting last night. I went back and charted this. Of the 12 games Carolina played last year, they scored on 6 of 12 opening drives. So they had a touchdown against Virginia Tech, a touchdown against Vanderbilt, touchdown against Kentucky. They had a field goal against A&M, and then a field goal against Alabama, a field goal against A&M, and a touchdown against Coastal Carolina. So in half the games, you got points on your first drive. That is awesome. That is it. That's exactly what you need to do. When you talk about getting the ball the first time, you got to go out there and you got to do something, right? And 6 times last year, South Carolina came away with some kind of points, which is always going to be a plus and a great way to start the game. The problem with it was they were very feast or famine, right? It's kind of like in baseball when you're a home run or strikeout type of guy. Like, yeah, hitting a home run's great, but if your other option is striking out, I'd rather you maybe get some base hits mixed in there too. That'd be kind of cool because South Carolina was very all or nothing when it came to opening drives last year, because in the other 6 games, they went 3 and out against South Carolina State. They punted in 4 plays against Missouri. They had that, of course, fumble on the first snap of the game against LSU. They turned it over on downs at the Oklahoma 3. Remember, 4 straight runs inside the Oklahoma 9 in the way that game started. They had a 3 and out against against Ole Miss, and they had a 3 and out against Clemson as well. So really, there's no other drives to point at in those other 6 games. Say, okay, well, at least you're doing something positive. Like, it's one thing to go, all right, you went like 8 or 9 plays, maybe the drive stalls out at, the opponent 42-yard line, and you have to punt or something like that. Again, it's not great, but you're at least moving the football. You're doing something positive at some point during that drive before you eventually have to give it back to the other team. There was none of that. It was either South Carolina was scoring or they were giving the ball away very quickly, putting their defense on the field, and typically in most of those cases allowing a short field for their opponent to work with when it came to starting their first drive of the game. And that's something that Carolina has to be better at this year, is setting that tone to start the game. Again, what you do on that opening drive establishes what the game's going to be, right? You're going through your scripted plays. You're figuring out what's working. And I don't know, maybe this is where we can give Mike Shula a little bit of credit, is like, hey, for half those opening drives last year, job well done. You, and he wasn't coaching, I guess, for the final 3. So for Shula opening drives last year, out of the 9 games that he coached in, they scored on 1, 2, 3, 4. So again, still about half. So for 4 of those games, congratulations, you were at least able to score there. But it's the other ones on the other side. It's like, no, we can't do that. Again, you have to at least be establishing something consistent on those opening drives to set a tone, even if you're not crossing the goal line or you're not putting a kick through the uprights, right? And that's something you want to see more of this upcoming season. And again, it all goes back to this ongoing conversation that we're going to continue to have for at least the next 75 days, probably more, about what to expect out of the Kendall Briles offense. And there's a lot of things on the wish list, a lot of things we want to see, a lot of things that we hope to see that are the opposite of what the Shula offense was. Again, that's a low bar to clear. When we talk about statistically, when you talk about what they were accomplishing offensively last year, Kendall Briles doesn't have to do a lot for us to say, okay, well, this hire was successful. This is a step in the right direction. And one thing that I would like to see is more consistency on the opening drives of the game. Now, it's a pipe dream to say you're going to go out there and score on every single opening drive over the course of 12 games, 13 games, 14 games, 15 games, however many games you end up playing coming up next year. But being more consistent with it is something that I do think is a little bit more feasible. So, yeah, you may not score on every single opening drive, but again, can you put together something? Because I don't want you to go 3 and out. If you're going 3 and out and setting up the opponent with a short field to get the ball at the, your 40-yard line to start their drive, that's not good either, right? If you're having an illegal snap on the first play of the game against LSU and handing the ball basically on their almost goal line at that point in time, that ain't good. If you're fumbling, if you're throwing interceptions, like those kind of things can't happen on opening drives because you are setting the tone ultimately for the game. And that's one thing that I do hope with this new offense, with Kendall Briles as the offensive play caller, that we see more consistency and more, respectability when it comes to what they're doing on a game in, game out basis on that opening drive of the game. Now, yeah, it'd be great if, Sellers to Sellers for 75 yards was the first play of every single game. Not going to happen. If you saw a few of those this year, that would be pretty cool, though. But I just want to see it be something that we can rely on a little bit more, saying, hey, yeah, even if you're not getting a field goal out of it, you're at least driving deep enough into your opponent's territory to where, yeah, if you're punting in midfield, if you're punting at your opponent's 45-yard line, well, guess what? Now you have the opportunity to potentially pin your opponent within their own 10-yard line or 5-yard line or something along those lines, and really put the pressure on them as they're starting their first drive to have to go 90 or 95 yards or something along those lines, and let your defense do what it does and shine there. Because, again, we kind of assume this defense is probably going to be pretty good once again, like it was, one season ago. So it all goes back to just being consistent, even without points. Again, you don't have to score in every single opening drive as much as we would love for that to happen. It's probably not going to, but just being more than feast or famine, right? Home runs are great, but if the other side of the coin is always a strikeout, that gets old after a while. Give me some base hits. Give me a single. Give me a double. Give me something there in the middle that I can rely on, saying, okay, I know when South Carolina starts the game, when they get the football for the first time, whether it is right there at the start of the game or the first time the defense is able to force a stop, then I know you're going to do something with it. And again, I don't have any doubts, right, that Kendall Briles can do that. Because again, the Shula stuff spoke for itself a year ago, and again, we'd be here all day just reliving the complaints of what the Shula offense was last season. But that's one thing I'm really looking for, is how more consistent can you be on those opening drives of the game, and setting that tone, right? Setting the tone, showing what you are, establishing things, getting into a rhythm. That's another thing. Getting into a rhythm in those first handful of plays, you're going through your script, is really important as well. If you're 3 and out, well, guess what? You're in 3 plays. And if you're, punting it to your opponent, who knows how long do they have the ball until you get it back, and then, what do you do from there? If you can get in 7, 8, and maybe even 9 plays or something along those lines, just to kind of establish a rhythm, try a couple different things, that obviously sets you up better for success as the game goes along, because you've been able to feel out more things on that opening drive. And again, it goes back to just a long wish list of what we're hoping for when it comes to the Kendall Briles offense, and one of those things is a long drive, or a more sustained drives to start the game and set that tone for what that game is going to be. So again, 75 days until South Carolina kicks things off against Kent State to start the season on September 5th. We'll get into the opponent previews coming up next. I'll tell you what I'm going to do with Kent State and Towson coming up in just a moment as we get into that, as the Extra Point rolls along. Tyler Head along with you here on your Monday on the Game.
Oh yeah, I mean he's definitely one of those guys. It's kind of funny. Coach Snall, he's got a mix of different personalities. He's got a great balance of, he can be extremely serious and strict. He's also
All right, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Monday on the Game. 75 days until South Carolina kicks off a season, and again, we start to answer some of these questions that we have had about this team, and we're going to continue to have a lot of same conversations about the same players and same storylines that we've been talking about through so much of this offseason, and I think we're all just ready to see what this team's going to be in action once the season finally does get here. So as we go through the last couple of weeks of June here, I want to start previewing these opponents, right? Where every single day, and again, Jack will be back in here coming up on Wednesdays. He's out today and tomorrow, but take an opponent each day and really dive into what to expect out of them, what they've done in the offseason, what we know about them up to this point, and what that team possibly could look like by the time that game that South Carolina plays against them obviously ends up rolling around. That being said, I'm going to do things a little differently for the first two games of the year because it's Kent State and Towson, and no disrespect to the Golden Flashes or the Tigers in the case of Towson, but those are games that we hope South Carolina doesn't have to play nail biters in. Right now, look, I was in the stadium for the Old Dominion game. I was there. I was also there a couple years ago when South Carolina played Jacksonville State, and before Stone Blanton, had that pick six. We're all sitting there looking at each other like they're really about to lose this game, aren't they? You know what I mean? So I'm well aware. I know what happened against Citadel all those years ago. I'm well aware that South Carolina has had a reputation in the past of playing really tight games or losing to teams they probably don't have business losing to or playing tight games against. That being said, I'm going to be optimistic here, and I'm going to hope that these are teams that we don't have to know all the nuance of, know all the inner workings of, because South Carolina is going to handle their business. They're going to win these games by multiple scores, and we're not going to have to really break down and analyze this too heavy because these games end up being blows. That's the idea, right? That is why these games are scheduled the way they are. Again, Miami was supposed to be your week one opponent. I much rather would dive into what Miami is right now than Kent State, right? But when the Miami game was canceled, moved off the calendar, you supplemented it with the Kent State game. We all knew the reason why, and that's because that's a game that can allow you a tune-up, an opportunity to get a win in the books. 2 wins when you count Towson the week after that, get the season off to a really, really good start. So I'm just going to combine Kent State and Towson, and instead of talking about the specifics of those teams, we're kind of focusing on what you want to see South Carolina do in those games. Now, I do want to give credit for Kent State for the prior couple years legitimately have been the worst team in college football. Last year, with Mike Carney taking over as head coach, they did go 5-7, which for them may as well have been 12-0 in a national championship, considering where that program was. They did take a step in the right direction, but I look at what South Carolina has, and I don't think it should be a problem for the Gamecocks to be able to win that game, hopefully pretty handily. Again, I've been in the stadium for tight games, and I know a lot of you are probably yelling at me right now about the chicken curse or something along those lines, but I'm going to be optimistic and say I don't think South Carolina should have an issue in either of these first two games. The first 8 quarters should be hopefully relatively clean and stress-free football over at Williams-Brice Stadium. That being said, I want to kind of get into some of the objectives of what South Carolina needs to do in these first 2 games. And number one, stay healthy, right? Don't get hurt. That is as black and white as it can be. Do not lose anybody in those first 2 games before you get into your stretch run of the final 10 where you play 9 straight SEC opponents and then Clemson to wrap up the season. You're already out Jacarius Peak, right? Well, I guess technically we don't know, right? Jacarius Peak is slated to return when the season begins. But as I've said, and as many of us said here in the airways at 107.5, I'd hold him out even longer, right? Like, I don't need Jacarius Peak to play against Kent State. I don't need Jacarius Peak to play against Towson for South Carolina to win. If you do need him to play for them to win, we got other problems, right? Like, you should be able to handle your business without him. Him aside, nobody else gets hurt, right? And look, it's going to be hot. There's going to be cramps and things like that, which, hey, get stretched, eat a banana, or drink up Gatorade or whatever, or Powerade or whatever, and then get back out there. Major injuries, right? Things that are going to keep you out for multiple games. That's what we don't need. And I almost wonder as well. We talk about the Kendall Briles offense and how much we expect LaNorris Sellers to get the ball in his hands and be able to run the football. I almost wonder if that's maybe even a little bit limited in those first couple of games as well, because, look, let's face it, LaNorris Sellers is injury prone, right? He has missed at least half of a game in his 2 seasons as a starter, and missed half against LSU, a full game against Akron the next week, missed the second half against Vanderbilt last year, and these are happening early in the season. So, again, knock on wood, it doesn't happen, but you have a quarterback that in 2 years as a starter has missed significant time, as well as a handful of drives here and there, in the prior season 2 years ago as well. So limiting his hits, I think it's going to be very important in those first couple games for South Carolina. Now, again, ideally, if you're dominating these games, you're up 38-3 at halftime, you can sit these starters, right? In both these games. And that I'd love for Sellers and Dylan Stewart and Nick Harbor to not even have to touch the field in the second half of these games. I'd rather those guys be sitting on the sidelines, sipping on Powerade with baseball caps and towels on, right? It's trying to stay cool instead of out there, still working. Let the other guys get in, let some of the younger guys get in, develop and all that kind of stuff. So again, objective number 1, stay healthy. Don't get hurt in the first 2 games of the year. Objective number 2, experiment on offense, right? Like here is your opportunity to finally get out there against a different opponent and implement what you have offensively. Now we know they're not going to go out there and give you everything, right? That special trick they have in their back pocket for, a fourth down against, Clemson late in the year or something like that, that's probably not going to come out in this game. But we're going to see the structure of what this offense is and probably the more basic version of it against these two teams. And you hopefully have 8 full quarters of football to really tune up and experiment with this, try different packages, try different guys in different roles and all that kind of stuff. Because, again, we didn't even get a spring game, right? We didn't even get the bare bones version of this from a fan perspective to see. And even for, the guys like at Gamecock Central that got to go out there and view the media sessions during the spring, they didn't get to see it either, right? They're watching stretches and they're watching drills and things like that. They did not get to see the full structure of the offense being run in a game scenario, game type of setting. So it's all going to be new for all of us. And you have, if you can put up enough points and your defense does this job, you have 8 quarters of free reign to kind of do whatever you want and experiment and fine tune. Again, Kendall Briles has been doing this for a long time. He doesn't have to learn as much as, first-time coordinator or something along those lines, but he's got new players. He's got guys he's never worked with before that I'm sure he has ideas and things that he wants to try and experiment with, and this is the first opportunity to do that in these first 2 games against lesser competition before you start in your conference play in week number 3. And then objective number 3, as I just kind of mentioned a moment ago as well, put them away early, right? Don't make this a thing. We see this so many times. The longer you let a lesser opponent, G5, FCS, whatever it may be, the longer you let those teams hang around, the more belief there is. If you let these games be 1 score going into halftime, that fiery speech the coach is giving on the other side legitimately can fire that team up. And that team's going to come out in the second half believing that they can win. Do what you did against Coastal last year. End it quickly. Jump on them quickly. Score a bunch of points. Don't give them any belief going into halftime. And again, ideally, if you can have all your starters sitting out the second half, that would be fantastic. Don't make it this thing. Again, as I said at the beginning of the segment, I know I've been there in the stadium seeing South Carolina play nail-biters against teams they had no business doing that against. But I believe with what they have on this team, with what we believe are upgrades, and when it comes to the coaching staff, particularly Kendall Briles on offense, they shouldn't be in those situations this time around with Kent State and Towson. And again, give me a couple touchdowns quick, put them out of their misery, and let us enjoy a very hot but comfortable Saturday in Williams-Brice Stadium, relatively stress-free. And again, you got 8 quarters of football to tune up and fine-tune things and get ready for conference play coming up in week number 3. So again, I felt like it wasn't really worth diving in to the specifics of Kent State and Towson themselves, more about, hey, what does South Carolina need to do in these first 2 games from an objective standpoint? Stay healthy, experiment on offense, and just put these teams away early and handle your business. Don't make this a thing. Don't end up being on SportsCenter that night saying, oh, wow, look at this wild game at Williams-Brice Stadium between South Carolina and Kent State. Don't be the story. Make it boring. Make it uneventful. Make it a game that the highlight shows don't want to talk about because you just put them away that easily, right? That's what we hope for these first two games. We'll get into the beginning of conference play with Mississippi State coming up tomorrow as, again, we're counting down 75 days till South Carolina kicks off the season on September 5th. Another thing that I missed last week was the fallout of the Brendan Sorsby situation. He's not playing college football this upcoming year. Still waiting on the decision from the NFL. What's going to happen there? What does this mean for Texas Tech? Is their reputation tarnished going forward? We'll discuss that on the other side. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Monday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Monday on the Game. Again, I missed several things last week. One of them was the latest in the Brendan Sorsby saga. I was, again, getting notifications on my phone from ESPN and stuff like that as the week went along to keep up with the sports world. So my eyebrows did shoot up a little bit when I saw the update that, well, Brendan Sorsby is dropping his lawsuit against the NCAA and just going to go ahead and apply for the NFL supplemental draft instead. And I was like, okay, well, I guess that fight is over after Texas Tech, just completely embarrassed themselves in front of the entire college football world. So now Sorsby waiting on his approval to be allowed to partake in said to be allowed a supplemental draft to take part in if the NFL allows them to do so. And we're still waiting on that final approval to happen. That being said, Louis Riddick on ESPN the other day questioned if Sorsby would be accepted by NFL locker rooms given the nature of what he got in trouble for.
Because the one thing that you really do kind of like always gel with players about is this: we're here to win football games. And you trust that guys, when they go on the football field, all the stuff that maybe they're dealing with personally is left behind, because we're all out here trying to like establish our livelihood, take care of our families, win football games, because that's what the profession calls for. With this young man, now think about this. You bring him into your football team. As a football player, you're going to be sitting there and thinking, hey, look, you're going to be scrutinizing every single thing he does on the football field on game day. Every pass he throws, you're going, if that's not a complete pass, did you try to do that? Are you betting on us? Are you really are we all rowing in the same direction here? Are you looking out just for yourself? Are you on to take, there's a lot of things. Look, I think Todd Monken said it best. This is a slippery slope. It's a very slippery slope, because this is the kind of thing you have to be dead sure on, as far as this young man has kind of made the strides and done the things necessary to where you feel reasonably assured that this is not going to be an issue that's going to affect your football team and the integrity of the game when your team is out there on the field. And I don't know how you get comfortable with that.
Right.
I don't know at this point.
And that's a really good point that he brings up. And, as it's going to be interesting to see that transition as he goes from dealing with this in college, where, again, he was seemingly set to play based on the preliminary injunction that the judge had granted to him, even though the NCAA had ruled him ineligible. The NFL does not play around with these kind of things. And again, we're still waiting on the approval. I don't know what the possibility is, but, I mean, the NFL could still say no, I guess, and there's not an opportunity for him to enter a supplemental draft and make it in that way, because, again, they're pretty black and white, as all other professional sports leagues are. That was the whole crux of this matter when it came to the Sorsby stuff, is like in every other sport, especially professional sports, if you're betting, especially on your own team, that's a no-no. That's zero tolerance. Again, Pete Rose not allowed the Hall of Fame for that exact thing. But college football, the way its rules worked, Sorsby was going to find a way around that until he decided to drop the lawsuit against the NCAA. But the NFL didn't play that game. And as Louis Riddick mentions there, as much as you can say you're a changed person, as much as you can say, hey, I went through this rehab and did this program or whatever it may be, there's going to be teammates in the locker room, whenever you do get to play, because I don't know where he would go. I don't know when he would start or whatever it may be. But if you're out there on the field and you're not playing well, they're going to say, hey, are you doing this for your own financial gain? Are you throwing this game, shaving points, whatever it may be, to benefit yourself? Like, those questions may never go away for Brendan Sorsby in his college career in his football career, because of how deeply ingrained into this gambling stuff that he was. And clearly it was an addiction. As we talked about, I'm a mental health advocate through and through. And I didn't have any problem with Texas Tech saying, hey, we want to help this kid out, beat this addiction. That is fantastic. Now, again, the other way they went about that was what more people had a problem with. But I do hope Sorsby is able to beat this, and I do hope he never has a gambling problem again. And, hey, good luck to the guy in the NFL, wherever he ends up, if he does get the opportunity to be part of the supplemental draft. I think today is officially the deadline, so hopefully we'll learn which way the NFL is going to go with this sometime here very, very soon. But that, regardless, he's done in college football. The saga with him in Texas Tech and him playing this upcoming season has gone out the window. Now Texas Tech has to go back to the drawing board with their quarterback situation. Will Hammond, coming off of an injury, I'm assuming is going to be the starter at this point in time. They brought in a transfer in Kirk Francis from Tulsa that put up a few numbers over the course of a couple of years, but nobody that I think they'd have the same confidence in as a guy like Brendan Sorsby. And I was listening to Josh Pate the other day, and I think people have gotten a little bit twisted is I don't know if Texas Tech was looking at this like, hey, Brennan Sorsby is the greatest quarterback in all of college football, or, hey, he's better than what we had, right? Baron Morton had a terrible game when they got eliminated in the Orange Bowl, a season ago, and Brennan Sorsby, they looked at as an upgrade, which is why they stumped so hard for him to be able to play. And as I said, as that whole thing was going on, and Joey McGuire was saying stuff, and Cody Campbell was going on podcasts and saying stuff, I was like, I don't even know if Texas Tech truly believes what they're saying, but they know they're so deep into this. Their best option at quarterback is Brennan Sorsby, so they're going to stump for him as much as they can, even if it makes them look really, really stupid in the court of public opinion. And oh boy, it did. Well, now Brennan Sorsby is not playing college football, and now they have to figure out what their quarterback situation is going to be going forward, in addition to the fact they've really permanently stained their reputation when it comes to college athletics, and I don't know if it was worth it, right? Because now, and here's the thing, we did such a 180 on Texas Tech so fast. A couple weeks ago, we were praising them for that whole Texas thing, right? Where Steve Sarkisian had taken the shot at Texas Tech, saying, "Oh, there's a team in our state that if we played or if our 2s and 3s played their schedule, they'd go undefeated and win the conference and make the playoff and all that kind of stuff." And Texas Tech called their bluff, and I, for one, said, "Good for them, good for Cody Campbell for saying, hey, you know what? We'll buy out Texas State, we'll buy out Abilene Christian, we'll get those games off the books for the first week of the season. We'll play Texas." And again, it was radio silence from Texas, and we kind of figured it would be, but good for them for calling their bluff on that. And then the Sorsby stuff happens, and we immediately kind of turn on them, rightfully so, because of the way they were conducting themselves and the argument they were trying to make and all that kind of stuff. And when you couple that with the antics of their softball team and things like that, they've become maybe the most hated program in college athletics. I don't know. LSU's still up there, but one of the most hated, right? And they're always going to be that school that's just funneled by money, right? And we're looking at this from a football standpoint. Texas Tech has been good in the past. There were good teams under Mike Leach. They had exciting players like Crabtree and guys like that. But they've never been like a serious national championship contender until they had the ability to spend a lot of money. And even then, nobody, I don't know how many people looked at them going into last year's playoff as yeah, we think this is a team that could really win the whole thing. And they got eliminated by, I guess it was Oregon in that Orange Bowl last year. It wasn't even close. Right? Or was it Miami? Whoever it was that they played in the Orange Bowl last year and ended up losing. So they're still not looked at as like a national championship contender, but they'll continue to spend at as high a level as anybody in college football. But this whole thing with them basically trying to tell everybody else they were stupid for pointing at the integrity of the game as a reason why Brennan Sorsby should not play college football, that's not something they're going to be able to shake off. They want to be the villain. They're going to have to embrace it, right? They are what they are, and people don't soon forget these kind of scenarios or these kind of situations that sweep across the college sports landscape, and Texas Tech is going to always have that target on their back. And again, I don't agree with Cody Campbell that, people are afraid of Texas Tech. Not necessarily. I think people are just more annoyed by them than anything else. But, hey, you want to be the villain? Congratulations, you are. And, again, we'll see how they end up faring this upcoming year. But I have a feeling a lot of people are going to be rooting against Texas Tech when it comes to this upcoming season because of everything that came from the Brennan Sorsby situation. So we'll see how they do once football season starts coming up here in a couple of months. We'll come back, wrap up hour number 2. If you had your choice of sporting field, court, pitch, or whatever to run across during a live event, which one would you choose? Because we had a unique example of that happen this past weekend that I want to talk about. It's coming up next. It is The Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Monday here on The Game.
there.
So look at this. We had a fan.
He thinks that's Matt Kenseth.
Hopped the fence and got on track. What's Sheldon Creed thinking right here?
Oh my God, do you have a Sharpie?
What is happening?
He didn't even get a selfie. I mean, you talk about a missed opportunity.
Well, I'm going to tell you, we're on
they
a
find
military
him,
base.
they will find you.
Sheldon's like, you got to get out of here, man.
How did he get on the track?
Well, look how he gets off. Look at him exit.
He has flip-flops on.
Now watch this. He loses one. He's going to lose a flip-flop. Here, watch, his shoe comes off. He's got to hop the other fence. Yeah, no problem.
That's this one really well.
I mean,
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Monday on the Game. In case you missed it over the weekend, NASCAR was in San Diego doing something really cool and really special. They were at the Coronado Naval Base running all three of their series, the Truck Series on Friday, the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series on Saturday, and the Cup Series on Sunday in a street course race there on the Naval Base to celebrate America 250 as well as the 250th birthday of the United States Navy. And in the middle of a red flag on Saturday, as you just heard there from CW Sports, a fan ends up jumping the fence and going up to Sheldon Creed's car and talking to him through the window net. I don't remember what he specifically asked him, but talks to him for a moment, kind of double taps the hood of the car, then hops over the fence. Now, if you're wondering, he was promptly apprehended by NCIS moments later. And look, if you run on the track at any typical NASCAR event, like any sporting event, they're going to throw you in the drunk tank or whatever, maybe ban you from the place for life. When you do it on an active military base, you're potentially facing federal charges. So I don't know what's going to happen to that guy. He's in a lot of trouble, I can tell you that much. But it begged a question in my mind after seeing that, and especially off the heels of what happened in the NBA Finals, and I forget what game it was, where the fan ran on the court and tried to snap the selfie with Victor Wembanyama. Wemby was too tall to get his entire body in the selfie, but we've seen a couple of incidents like this coming up here as of recently. What sporting event, what type of field, if given the opportunity, if you had to do it, what would you run on? Would it be a football field during a game, a baseball field, a basketball court, a soccer pitch, or racetrack? Heck, if you want to do that, you can throw that as well. I don't believe anybody's ever run on the ice for a hockey game. Maybe they have. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're not going to get very far because, well, quite frankly, if you got shoes on, that's not going to work very well on ice as it is anyway. But what would you choose? Like, what would be your choice of thing to run on during a live sporting event? Because I feel like football field gives you more space, right? Big, wide open field. You can run around. Now, there's a lot more people down there. You got the 22 on the field, everybody on the sidelines, coaches, and that kind of stuff. So you have more obstacles to get through. And as we've seen in years past, sometimes if you have an aggravated enough football player, they might tackle you themselves before security gets there. So you do run that risk when it comes to running on a football field. I wouldn't do like basketball court because there's just not enough space there. Like, again, a basketball court is a smaller space anyway. You don't have as much place to run, and they'll probably apprehend you pretty quickly. So I don't think you'd get as much enjoyment out of that one. Let me know. 803-404-6100. What sporting event venue space would you feel comfortable running on if you had to do it during a live sporting event? Nameless Texter goes with baseball field, definitely a lot of open space, fewer people on the field, and easier escape routes depending on what venue you're in. That's a really good point. You look at, and again, let's go like Major League Baseball here. You look at a lot of fields around there, especially like a Fenway Park, where you have like shorter walls, where let's say you ran from one side of the outfield to the other. If you have people that are generous enough in the crowd to give you space and allow you to escape up the aisleway, you might be able to get away with it. Probably not, but you might have your best chance of getting away with it. That's like football stadiums, right? For the most part, their walls are really high. Now, again, I guess you technically have the tunnels you could run through, but for the most part, when you get on a football field, that's ending one way. You're getting tackled by security or again a player, and that's it. You're getting arrested, thrown in the drunk tank, or whatever it may be. So, yeah, I guess a baseball field gives you the best opportunity to make an escape while also having some fun, and you got a lot of space to run around in. You see a lot of times people that run on baseball fields, they can get away for a while. Now, again, most of them eventually get caught by security, but you can go to YouTube and look up fan runs on baseball field. And you'll see some people, they'll get out there, they'll run for a while, right? They'll have their fun before eventually being apprehended and all that kind of stuff. So that might end up taking the cake. Another nameless texter here says soccer pitch. Again, I wouldn't be threatened by he says I wouldn't be threatened by any of the soccer players in terms of tackling me. Got a lot of space to run, and maybe I can get through a tunnel before security gets me. Well, there's going to be more security waiting up the tunnel. I can go ahead and tell you that. But you would have a lot of space to run there, and I to my knowledge, I don't know of anybody that's run on a soccer pitch and been tackled by one of said soccer players. So you might be onto something there. I don't know, but that would maybe be good. I wouldn't. And by the way, I say this, I don't recommend doing this for anybody. That is illegal. That is trespassing. If you're running on an active field for a live sporting event happening, and it will likely get you banned from life for maybe not only said venue that you're doing this at, but maybe every other venue in that league or whatever that may be. So I'm not advocating doing this. It's hypothetical. If you had to do it, which one would you do? So appreciate you guys weighing in on the Firehouse Subs text line at 803-404-6100. Again, I'll look it up later, but I'm interested to know what happened to the guy, or what's going to happen to the guy that ran on the racetrack at the naval base, because, again, it's not just getting thrown in the drunk tank. You could face some serious federal charges because that is government property that you're trespassing on at that point in time. And I think everybody knows trespassing on government property is never a good idea. So there you go. Appreciate you guys weighing in, 803-404-6100. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour coming up next. 75 days until kickoff. We'll restart our trivia coming up at hour number 3 as we continue on your Monday here on The Game. 11 o'clock on your Monday morning. Welcome in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head back in the fold again after my week off. So hopefully Wes and Chris were able to hold things down well last week. As I kind of ran through it at the beginning of the 9 o'clock hour. A lot of things going on. Obviously, I had the intro for Schnall a week ago. Unfortunately, had the news with Sam Williams-Dixon. So you had a lot of things going on last week around Gamecock sports that I'm sure you guys dove into plenty.
A couple bones to pick, maybe, Tyler. Maybe a couple.
Yeah.
You didn't send us any trivia.
Oh, I thought you guys were going to do that yourselves.
No, you said we did it. We did it.
Okay.
We thought, maybe I made this up, but I thought you said, hey, I'll send it to you.
No, I did not say that.
Ooh.
In fact, didn't
you hear it, Wes?
I completely unplugged.
I'm going to check the tape on that.
I completely unplugged from everything last week.
Maybe you said you'd send us a buy or sell. We didn't do buy or sell. We took a week. You said you would send something.
I don't recall
you did.
committing to sending
That's okay.
anything.
We did do, so no buy or sell. We took a week off.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't feel right without you. We did do trivia, so Wes and I split it.
Okay. So
2 days I came up with questions. 2 days he came up with, I don't remember. Wes, do you even remember the score? We didn't score it very well.
No, you're lying. We only did 1 and 1.
1 and 1, that's right.
So you each got one full point. Is that what you're telling me? All right.
We both got him?
I think so.
I thought you missed the one I gave you. Didn't I gave you a Troy Williamson one.
Yeah, you gave me credit.
Okay. Just give us 1 and 1.
Okay, all right.
That thing was a wash.
So that means
we did a good job coming up with the
You gave me credit because I was heading in the wrong direction, and you were like, and then I said it, and you were like, okay, I guess.
Okay, we might need it. We might need check tape for a lot of things.
So that means, Chris, you're leading now 4.5 to Wes's 3.5. Okay, adding a point for both of you. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Then,
very cool.
For number 75 today, that's another one, and not a lot of people have worn 75, believe it or not.
There used to be a Gamecock history website.
Gamecock Archives?
Yeah.
Is it down now?
I don't know if it's still there, but it would have like a.
It's still up here. Yep.
Does it have the
by number?
By the number?
I think it's got by name, but I don't. It's also not working properly, so. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
It's kind of sort of up.
Because I had, I swear I think it was through them. I at one point had them bookmarked where you could go through and look at basically a list of every guy who had worn that particular number. And you could even just edit the URL to easily get to whatever number you wanted. And I had it bookmarked for the longest time, but then all of a sudden it broke. It just didn't exist anymore. So
that would be helpful.
Be very helpful.
Yeah, I'm on the website right now. It's not. I got to the letters, but nothing's pulling up as I'm clicking on them. So maybe the website's not functioning completely properly.
Do you have a 75 for us?
I do have. It's not a player. It is a trivia question itself. Wes, would you like to take a guess on what this question could be pertaining to the number 75? It is recent, I'll tell you that much.
This South Carolina player had a 75-yard kickoff return for touchdown within the last 10 years.
And what would the answer to that be?
I have no idea. I don't know if there would have been a
75-yard kickoff touchdown is an odd one because that would be a very short kick.
Yeah. I just was. I don't
penalty or something.
Yeah. I was the reason my mind went to kickoffs was just a touchback puts you at the 25. That doesn't really affect how long a kickoff return would be, but that was just why. That's why my brain went to kickoff returns.
You're kind of on the right track.
Okay.
Because the trivia question is, what was the most recent 75-yard touchdown South Carolina had?
Okay, well, see, and if you scored on the first play of a drive coming out of a touchback, it would conceivably be 75 yards.
Yes.
That's a good one.
How long was the catch and run for touchdown to Leggett against Mississippi State?
We actually did this for a previous trivia question.
How long? So it wasn't 75?
I want to say it was a little longer.
Okay. Was it?
Or a little shorter.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it was 75.
Okay. All right.
I specifically remember we went back and forth on that.
Was it the first play of a drive, Tyler?
Yes.
Okay. I also feel like we are missing like this one. I feel like might be. Is it very obvious, Tyler?
I'd say it's relatively.
Were you here?
Yeah, I was here.
Okay, that eliminated the one I was thinking of.
You're probably gonna like hit yourself in the top of the head, like, dang, how'd I forget that?
Okay. Where'd your head go? Let's buy some time here.
I originally, and this is probably wrong, I was going to do the Deebo Samuel slant against Kentucky, like first play of the game, first play from scrimmage.
Mm-hmm.
That might have actually been more than 75.
Again, I'm talking the most recent 75-yard touchdown.
Tyler's kind of making it seem like it was this past season.
When we say things like that, I always like to look and see Tyler's poker face.
You know, the one that came to mind that I cannot remember how long it was or if it was the first play was the Nick Carber catch and run against Texas A&M.
He just looked down.
Yeah. I'm going to go with that. I feel like that's wrong, but I can't think of another one.
I feel like that might have been on the second play of that drive.
Yeah.
But
I'm definitely going to be mad when we hear the answer.
Hold on.
Guarantee you that.
Mm-hmm. Tyler, was it, since he's already given his answer for this past season, was it this past season?
Yes, it was.
Guys, I tried to delete that season from memory.
Fair.
They start with. All right, I will just I will take Chris's answer too, just on the chance that he's right.
Okay.
Although
I don't think I'm right.
Incorrect. And here's Todd Ellis with the call.
Here's Lenore Sellers with Oscar Attaway to his right. Wide receiver screen to the left side. It's Sellers. He's got an opening in the 30, 35, 40.
Coastal Carolina.
And Jaden with a cutback in the 50. Trying to keep his feet at the 35, 30. Trying to outrun him. Going to get a block from Juwan Howell. He got it. Touchdown, Carolina. Touchdown, Jaden Sellers. 75 yards.
Sellers to Sellers, first play against Coastal Carolina.
Yep. God, how did we miss that? I told you I was going to be mad.
Now, again, that's a game that probably doesn't come to the top of your mind when you're thinking about last season, which is fair. But, yeah, the most recent now, Vendrevious Jacobs had a 74-yard touchdown against Clemson. Close.
That was I thought it was about to be that play.
Yeah.
The Nick Carber touchdown, by the way, that I referenced was 80 yards.
That's right.
So, oh well. That was on, I think, the first play of the drive, though. It was first and 10
it was
from the 20.
That was coming off an interception in the end zone.
Yeah.
Which goes to the traditional touchback, not the kickoff touchback.
Hey, Sellers to Sellers could be another fun combination we could see a lot this year, guys.
Yeah, I'm counting on it, man. I feel like, Chris, people still give I don't want to say little Sellers. They still give Jaden Sellers not enough credit. You know what I'm saying? Like, I even feel like in the discussion about wide receivers this offseason, we just haven't heard quite as much, like when fans bring up wide receivers. You don't hear quite as much about Jaden when you consider what he did as a true freshman last year, and when you also consider how many other true freshman wide receivers were in that class. And let's throw in the fact that, hey, he was the lowest ranked guy. I mean, he just was. That's a fact. And he went out there and pretty much outperformed the rest of the freshmen in terms of catches, receiving yards, touchdowns, and had a pretty big first year.
Third on the team in receptions. Now, your counterpoint, or anybody listening, well, the offense wasn't very good. Kind of, who cares, right? But, everybody talks about Nick Carber, rightfully so. Nick Carber had 30 catches, 618 yards, 6 touchdowns. Jaden Sellers was 22 catches, 337, a touchdown. And aside from that Harbor 80-yard catch, he had the second longest play from scrimmage on offense, all year. That, don't really care. It was against Coastal. Like, that kind of showed you what he can do. So you're right. I mean, it was, you look back on it, remember we were told, and the name wasn't even given, but we were told, like, out of that group of freshman receivers, this was very early, like, one of them had a little bit more edge, a little bit more juice than we thought. I think that had to have been Jaden Sellers, because he's always a guy. I remember seeing him in camp when he was getting recruited. He always kind of punched above his weight, like he played bigger than he actually is. He's not, never will be a quote-unquote big receiver, but he's just tough. And he has a chemistry with his brother, too, that I think you can't discount. So, everybody going into the season, again, they're going to talk about Harbor. And, Donovan Murph, when he came in last year, had more fanfare because he was a big-time recruit. He was highly ranked. Some of the other guys were highly ranked. But Sellers, very quickly showed, like he belongs.
Murph played in every game.
He played a lot, right?
Played in every game, which I think was the only – I think it actually Murph ended up being the only freshman, pretty sure, to play in every game last year.
Yeah.
Not even among the receivers, among all freshmen.
And the other thing about what Jaden did is he kind of came on later,
Yeah.
Like, he came in and had 22 catches and a touchdown and 337 yards as a true freshman in an offense that was not really conducive to making a lot of plays, as we saw, and kind of coming on late, not being out there game one. We started seeing him, midway through the season. So you kind of project it out and think about it. He's got an opportunity, I think, this season, if the offense is humming a little bit more, to make more of an impact.
Well, and Chris, I mean, how much of this season is going to be based on not Jaden Sellers, but Lenoir Sellers, and just getting him back going? So there's, like, I don't want to put so much pressure on one guy's shoulders, but, man, it kind of is what it is. Like, I think Kendall Briles and then, of course, Lenoir Sellers are the two guys in Columbia that you would dare say have as much impact on this potential season for South Carolina as anybody. You know what I mean? And so all those things we're talking about, like, what does Jaden do? Can you just flip the vibes around the program externally right now? Can you get recruiting back going for all these recruits that are highly interested in the program but are uncertain about, the future in terms of Beamer's job security, all these different things? A lot of them, I think, just come down to Lenoir Sellers and come down to Kendall Briles putting him in a position to go succeed.
Yeah, I mean, Sellers, and we're kind of, I guess we're just riffing off this whole thing at this point, but, to go to Lenoir Sellers, like, I think that's something you and I have been hearing a lot about in the last few weeks in terms of, schematically, right, and technique-wise, there's a lot of differences and new things, and I think, frankly, better things that Kendall Briles is going to bring just from a scheme and a play-calling standpoint. But I think something we all noticed last year, and now that you've gone through that season and you can kind of look back on it, you kind of come to more of a realization that, like, Sellers was not playing with a lot of confidence. Like, compare the back half of 2025 to the back half of 2024, the almost irrational confidence he was playing with in 2024 versus what we saw last year's completely different player. Skills were still there, but there was a big difference. And I think the lack of success offensively, the lack of maybe trust, and all those different things played into that. So the first step is, honestly, man, it's not even about what's the scheme, what's the play call. It's like getting 16 back to that confidence level. And they haven't played a game yet this year, right? But everything that we've heard from the practice fields and just the vibes have been much more positive as far as Sellers seeming to regain some of that confidence that he had.
75 days until we see it between South Carolina and Kent State. This past weekend, though, a lot of visitors in town. We'll discuss coming up next here on The Game. Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris with you on your Monday here on the game. Again, we're still a little over 2 months away from the 2026 season getting started for South Carolina. And again, a lot of conversations to be had about what this team's going to be when that season does get rolling. But we always keep an eye on the future as well. And during the summer months, it's always important to note what's happening with these official visit weekends, guys. A lot of big names in town this weekend and a lot of things to take away from those visits as well.
Yeah, 5 OVs over the weekend, and Chris, 5 just very, very important ones. Not necessarily a huge quantity, but definitely high quality in terms of the guys that were on campus. And, you know, it's in some ways like almost any of these kids maybe would have headlined some weekends. I feel like, you know, you could start with any of them, but I feel like we have to start with the 5-star in Josh Dobson. Currently is at Huff, which is over the border in the Charlotte area, but was an in-state guy, was at Catawba Ridge earlier in his career, emerged at the time as just being a huge priority target for South Carolina, and was the number 1 player in the state of South Carolina. Now he's the number 1 player in the state of North Carolina, number 11 overall prospect in the country. For my money, the top cornerback in the country, and made his much-anticipated OV to South Carolina. And, man, the way some things had gone with his recruitment and the way schools were pushing for him, you know, all the LSU buzz at one point, all the Texas A&M buzz at a later point. I think the first step there for Carolina was just to get it to this weekend, to get him to Columbia on an OV, uncommitted, and to just lay it all out there for him. He made it into town, had his parents with him, which I think you know, was an important part of the process there, too, making sure they could get all of their questions answered because they are, you know, involved in his life. And, you know, I think for Carolina, I don't really know that it could have gone much better. The big headline here, too, is that July 1 is now the date that he's going to make his announcement. Final 4 schools here, Texas A&M, Michigan, Auburn, and the Gamecocks. And, you know, this weekend was just about South Carolina kind of putting all the finishing touches on a recruitment that really when they had him in for an unofficial, I remember in the spring, Chris, it kind of had some OV-type elements to it, some official visit elements. Meeting with Jeremiah Donati at the time. Donati was involved again this time, and just really I've always thought, Chris, that they were a little bit better in this thing than maybe the national folks think. But even with all the visits in the books, he's not going to take any more trips anywhere else. It will still be a battle until July 1 when he announces, I believe via a Rivals live stream is how he's going to do it.
Maybe a battle after that, too. But
true.
Yeah, I mean, it's really this sounds weird, but it's like the buzz about LSU, who's not in it anymore, but at one point was heavily in it. The A&M buzz, like, that's real. It's not it wasn't manufactured at any point. Very real. At the same time, have some people been underselling South Carolina's ultimate chances here currently, or if you kind of see it circling back around to them? I think so. I think both those things can be true. And to go back, we mentioned this before many times, but Josh Dobson was quoted earlier this year saying, like, I gave South Carolina the final visit for a reason. And as you pointed out, especially in this era, you got to make sure you get that visit. There are some schools out there, and actually Texas A&M, I think, is one of them. They're doing extremely well in recruiting. They got like 5 5-star commitments. Bunch of others in the top 60, 70, 75. And one of their strategies has been get kids on campus and try to get it shut down, you know, whenever. And to an extent, everybody tries to do that, but they've been pretty good at it. And so for South Carolina, the first step was get to this weekend, and they did that. Josh Dobson and his family, they're very familiar with South Carolina. There's probably not a lot of new things, per se, that they could learn. Oh, I hadn't seen that. Oh, I didn't know that. But it was an opportunity to reinforce a lot of those things. And from what we've been told, multiple sources, You know, the family was very impressed with what South Carolina put forward. It was very evident that Jeremiah Donati's involvement during the spring visit made a pretty big impact. You know, you could tell. Josh posted a picture of him and Donati, you know, leading into the official visit. And then for him to be present once again, there's a lot of emphasis on development. You know, Torian Gray has a great track record of that. Josh has said many times he wants to be developed. There's a high comfort level. Here's the thing, Wes, that I was paying the most attention to going into the weekend, and it is what has been the theme of this entire recruiting cycle for South Carolina. What has caused the greatest challenge? It's last season going 4-8, and the questions that's created around Shane Beamer and his stability. Right? Some prospects have been a little bit skittish, for lack of a better term, on signing up for that. Right? And committing early when they've got all these other options that are maybe more stable. First-year coaches who, you know, didn't go 4-8 last year. That came up, and Josh had some very pointed comments about it of like, that was my biggest question, was just his stability. And he seemed to feel better about that exiting the weekend.
Yeah, I think so, man. And I also think just more evidence that Jeremiah Donati just kind of gets it, you know, in terms of modern AD. You don't, nobody wants their boss like involved in every little thing, you know, to where it's like they're hovering. But when a AD is willing to step in when needed and help just provide just a key signal, hey, this is how much of a priority you are for us, that the athletic director was involved on your unofficial visit. Now he's involved on your official visit as well. And I think that says a lot to the kid, and says a lot about Donati and just how much, like I said, that he gets this thing. Another guy, Chris, that I think was a big storyline for the weekend would be Ivian Lewis, who comes in as a Kentucky commitment, and Carolina was very involved with him early on. He had said an OV. It got canceled when he committed to Kentucky, but then it gets put back on the books for this past weekend. And, you know, as someone the staff has kind of just remained in touch with, he was here his team was here, which included him for 7-on-7. We watched Mike Furry, you know, pay a ton of attention to that team, whether it's watching Lewis or some of his teammates that are really good players as well. And just sounds like everything went really, really well there for Lewis this weekend, and I think you probably exit that like feeling pretty good about where South Carolina stands there.
Yeah, Carolina was going to be really choosy, you know, for a third wide receiver take. They've got Javian Robinson and DJ Huggins already committed. Amari Patterson was on the board, off the board as of later last week, and so they kind of very quickly pivoted to Lewis, but not pivoted in the sense that this was going to be a reach, right? They already knew a lot about this guy, recruited him. I mean, we had told people back in, I think it was in May when he committed to Kentucky, like, this is somebody that South Carolina may still try to bring in on a visit. And that ended up happening. Actually shares an agent with Javian Robinson. You know, the staff, I think it kind of reinforced that they liked him as a player based on what they saw in 7-on-7. And so he's been quiet. We haven't talked to him after the visit, Wes. I think that's by design, kind of keeping things quiet. But I think it's safe to say Kentucky's very concerned here about potentially losing him, and
as they should be.
Yeah. And I think we might get some clarity on the direction this week. Tyler, we probably have a few other guys we could talk about too.
Yeah, we'll keep this conversation going on the other side as we continue on Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs under Monday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, West, and Chris, along with you here on your Monday on the Game, recapping what was a busy official visit weekend for South Carolina. And before we get into some of the other guys that were on campus, do want to ask a question. You guys were talking about, Jeremiah Donati's involvement when it comes to some of these official visits and how beneficial that can be in these processes. Is ADs being involved in these kind of things a newer thing in this new era of college football, or is that something that's been going on for a long time?
Yeah, I'm trying to think back, Tyler. I think it's always kind of been a thing. You don't always hear about it, and I think a lot of times you kind of hear it a little bit more when it's a school pulling out all the stops. I actually remember, I don't know why this one pops to mind specifically, but, I remember with Gigi Jackson's recruitment, like Ray Tanner being involved in that one. I remember, Chris, I feel like going all the way back to like Lattimore's recruitment, like the president of the university was involved. I think with Aspen Boulware on the softball side, there were administrators, maybe even the president. I feel like, don't quote me on there. I feel like I heard that at the time, being involved with her recruitment and just, I think one, especially with Dobson's questions, really his one remaining question about South Carolina would be like, hey, is this hot seat stuff I see on social media real? Having the AD involved and being, you being able to look him in the eye, I think is an important factor in all this. So in this case, there could be some actual realistic questions to bring up to the AD. Another part of it, though, Chris, I think is just, like I said earlier, it's just a signal. Hey, this is how big of a priority you are for us. This is how much you matter to us, that we're getting anybody and everybody here involved in your recruitment. And for what I understand, the previous time they were here and met with Donati, Donati was like in on the recruitment, like not just like, hey, I'm Jeremiah Donati, I'm the AD, let's take a picture. Like he was actively telling him
making
how
his pitch.
Telling him how important he was to the program, letting him know about future plans, telling him about how excited they are about Nike, about the stadium and the plans there. Like, actively recruiting Dobson and just letting him know how excited he was about having someone like that potentially become a student athlete at South Carolina. Because I would say this, I think that's a factor in this, man. Not that guys necessarily make their decisions directly based on academics anymore, but this is a kid who is academic-oriented, has a family that is academic-oriented, and certainly is going to want to have the academic side checked off on, their check marks, I would say, their check boxes, too. So I think when the AD meets with you, man, that just says a lot, I guess.
Yeah, it's not, it's not like an entirely new concept, but I think there are different levels to it. It doesn't happen on every official visit weekend with every prospect. When guys are just coming in for an unofficial visit on a Tuesday, generally they're not going to meet the AD, but for some guys, like Joshua Dobson, maybe. And Donati's been more involved in this one than we typically hear about, I would say, with prospects. And to Wes's point, not just smile for a photo, like take an active role in answering questions and kind of making your pitch. And I think that has played a role. It has resonated, I think, with Josh and his family.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And we talked so much, and again, we've talked a lot about Donati when it comes to the baseball search and his process of going about that, and how these new age ADs go and approach things. And that's another part of this job that probably doesn't get talked about as much as being involved in these things when you need them to, and how much that could potentially move the needle for, again, high profile guys that were on campus this past weekend to potentially landing them here at Carolina.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's, Chris, hit on a couple more of these guys that were in. Local kid and someone that South Carolina's been in on for quite a long time, man. Nate Carson, 4-star offensive lineman from Irmo, of course, and just a big, just blue chip offensive line prospect who has offers from everybody. I mean, Chris, I remember early on there was some buzz here about Ohio State and, his interest level there. And you have Clemson, Georgia, Tennessee have been involved. Colorado is in this thing late. And so the trend with pretty much all these kids right now is, hey, here's my final group. Here's my decision date. And then I'm going to go make a decision now. And so for Nate, Final Four, South Carolina, Clemson, Georgia, Colorado. I was about to say Tennessee because they've been in this thing for a long time. They are not in the official Final Four here. Has taken OVs to all those four and will announce his decision on July 3rd. So another one that will be coming up very, very soon. And one that I will just be completely frank with everybody on. I don't know if we have quite a feel on this one yet in terms of how it's going to go. It's had its twists. It's had its turns. I'll say that. I have always had a just weird gut feeling that South Carolina was where Nate Carson wanted to be and that he was going to go enjoy the process and was going to end up back like 30 minutes from home, Mm-hmm. But I don't know if you can say that solidly. I think Georgia has definitely caught his attention at times during this. And, Chris, I know you got some intel that Colorado is not to be completely counted out on this. I would be a little bit surprised at this point if it was Clemson.
Yes,
I
agree.
I think that's a good starting point. Okay, here's the Final Four. Now let's start chopping some schools off of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would chop Clemson off of Carson's list. I would chop Auburn off of Dobson's list. Like we can cut this thing down a little bit. But I think there's still maybe some jockeying there behind the scenes with the three programs.
Yeah, and I don't, Nate was quoted yesterday when we talked to him as saying he didn't know what he was going to do yet and had to sit down with his family. And sometimes you have to parse, okay, is that actually right? I do think it is in this case. And this is someone that, like, if you kind of follow the visits and what's happened, a lot of times it's been, where has he been last? And that's the public leader or the private leader. A lot of times it's just been the public leader, and so not there's anything wrong with that. Like, these visits are impressive. There's some impressionability there. South Carolina did get the last OV. Will they have the literal, last word on this one? I don't know. So I'm with you. When a recruitment has that many twists and turns, I don't think you can make a definitive statement. But I do think that they made a really good case this weekend. Nate will have to sit down and figure out, okay, honestly, we just got to say it. Figure out who's offering what in NIL. Is that most important? Is it just a part of it? Is being closer to home more important? And he has to figure all those things out. But I'm with you. I think they have an opportunity and probably a greater opportunity than going into the weekend to get him. It's just kind of still up in the air, I think, with, 2 weeks or so left to go in this recruitment.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ty.
No, sorry. Go ahead and finish your thought.
No, I just was going to say, I try not to go to gut feelings on this stuff because it's, you got to go with info. Colorado is real. And early on, there was also talk that Nate might just want to leave the area for school. That was something that was talked about very, very early on as a possibility. No disrespect to Colorado, but is he at the end of the day? And I know Colorado is. They've had some recruiting wins. They've been they've been aggressive in NIL at times. I don't know, man. I just maybe I'm completely wrong. That would still surprise me a little bit for him to pick a Colorado over South Carolina, Georgia, and again, maybe to a lesser extent like Clemson.
I'm with you too.
But the info is the info. So the fact Colorado is, according to what we've heard, still in it, is worth mentioning. So
disrespect intended on my end.
Fully intended.
Fully intended. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Disrespectfully, I can't see him picking Colorado over Georgia, South Carolina, Clemson. But the info says that could be possible.
Again,
So,
sorry. Anything else, Chris?
Oh, we do have two more guys if we wanted to talk about them from the weekend.
we do.
We can wrap up the hour with that coming up next. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris along with you here on your Monday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris with you here on your Monday, wrapping up the hour real quick before we talk a little bit more recruiting. Tonight, Game number 3, College World Series, North Carolina and Oklahoma. Split series so far this week, and Oklahoma wins game number 1. Gets out to an early lead yesterday before North Carolina runs away with game number 2. Pretty interesting story dynamic where you have a UNC team that was towards the top of college baseball pretty much the entire season, and then Oklahoma, who's obviously turned it on, got hot in the tournament. We know that big elimination they had against Georgia Tech in Atlanta. They obviously, ran through the super region out there in Lawrence, eliminated Georgia at the end of last week to get themselves into this College World Series final. Which way we going for the game 3 to decide it all tonight?
Man, I got to go UNC.
Yeah.
I feel like Oklahoma, they needed to get them while the getting was good, and you let UNC claw back into this thing, man. I just feel like UNC has probably been built for this all year long. The depth, that's a national championship quality team all season long. I know it's going to come down to one game, obviously, but in a 3-game series, which is obviously what this has become, I think the boys in Chapel Hill are going to get it done, which, ironically, you're talking about South Carolina goes to potentially try to hire a head baseball coach, and the guy goes on to win the national title, which is the same thing that happened with Sully at Florida a few years ago.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and also Caden Glauber.
Oh, my God.
From Fort Mill.
Yep.
Yeah.
29-0.
Get that guy in the portal.
When
Let's
he makes
just
an appearance in a game.
If nothing else,
probably should pitch him today.
Have him throw at least a pitch tonight, and you feel pretty good about your chances.
Yeah, throw a fastball. That's it. Nah, he's a stud. Oklahoma's a great story. They're 14-16 the SEC. Just shows how good that league is. All the way. Like we were talking the other day, South Carolina's national title team in 2010. Like they weren't the favorite going in. They kind of got hot at the right time. They were obviously super talented. That team was 22-9 in the SEC, and so the league's gotten harder than it was then. It's a deeper league, but it just goes to show. I mean, there are 5 SEC programs right going into Omaha. I'm sure Oklahoma fans thought, but I don't know if anybody else is like Oklahoma's the one out of all those. So it's been fun to watch. I got to go North Carolina too. Same reason Wes said, but. Certainly not going to be shocked if Oklahoma gets it done.
Yeah, I mean, North Carolina seems like the better-built team, kind of as you get into the deep waters of a Game 3 here with the depth of pitching and all that kind of stuff that should be beneficial for them. But there's something to be said about a team that has, the hot streak behind them. And what Oklahoma's done through this, postseason run so far has been special. You've had guys like Dayton LaChance that have just lit up in this back half of the season where, they keep showing up stat his first 16 games, first 30 games, no home runs. And he's hit, 17 or 18 since then, had 2 in that game on Saturday. So you never really know. I think it'll be a fun, competitive game. Game 3 doesn't quite have the same ring as like a Game 7 and like a World Series or something along those lines, but it's for all the marbles. And for Oklahoma's sake, the SEC trying to keep the streak alive of winning the national championship. And I can only imagine the conversations if North Carolina wins it and, oh no, the SEC didn't win any of the major titles this year. What's wrong with the conference?
So are you buying or selling? Are you buying Oklahoma wins? Is that it? Kind of felt like that's where you were leaning.
Yeah, I think I'll probably buy that just for the sake of being different. And there's something about momentum to me. Now again, they lost it a little bit yesterday with going up 2-0, and then North Carolina going on to win the game. But I don't know. There's something about this Oklahoma team that I like a lot, and a team that can score as much as they can is going to have a chance in any game. But regardless, I just wanted to be a fun, competitive game to wrap up not only the college baseball season, but the entire this past calendar year when it comes to college sports. And what a lot of interesting results we've had for sure.
Yeah, we have, man. I mean, two teams that at least how they're playing right now are well deserving of winning the whole thing. And yeah, I'm with you, man. I just hope it's a good game. One game baseball, you can get a variety of different outcomes. Like I think baseball is meant to be in series. And hey, if you're Oklahoma, if you would have said, and I think to tie this in a little bit locally, this is what we're talking about with South Carolina, man. You just want to go into every year where you feel like you have a team that is going to be competitive enough that at least has the potential to get hot and go on a run. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're not even in the tournament, if you're not even at the dance, you have no shot at it. Nobody in Oklahoma, I'm sure, even if you looked at the Sooner Scoop, the Sooner Scoop message boards, nobody over there was probably predicting that the Sooners would be one win away from a national title in baseball as the season was progressing, but here they are. And so that is because you built a good enough team to compete enough throughout the season that they were able to get in and didn't even, I was going to say got a favorable draw, but they didn't. They went through, I still think that Georgia Tech team was one of the best teams in the country easily. So they went through the fire, they came out the other side, and here they sit.
Yeah, again, game number 3 coming up tonight to wrap up the season, 7 o'clock on ESPN. We'll talk about it tomorrow and kind of put a bow on the college sports season for 2025 and 2026. We'll talk also more recruiting as well as roster building for both Gamecock baseball and Gamecock basketball, as well as a lot of that happened over the weekend, too. But that'll do it for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Halftime show coming up next. Myself and Bill Gunner here on The Game.